All right, this is an eye bolt that I ripped out of the side of a building on a facade that was being taken down to put up a brand new one. I guesstimate this thing is about 107 years old, probably original from the building. And I saw it and figured I could salvage it and do something with it. I envisioned a bench, so that's what I did. Here I am cutting off the nut. I could not get it off any other way. And cleaning up the eye bolts, I was rather impressed with how well these things had held up for 107 years of being out in the weather. You can see they were handmade, probably heated up and then hammered around the tip of an anvil, is what I imagine, just from looking at it, because they definitely were not manufactured in, automated way. So coming up is going to be the cleaned up picture, and you can see maybe about a 1/16 of an inch had rusted away over that time, so it's rather impressive, I gotta say. So if you ever wonder if steel can hold up to the elements, it absolutely can. Here's a picture of the building screenshot I took. You can see the facade, the lower part where the awning is, and then these things were going to the building. And then this is what it looks like today, in case you were wondering. They put a brand new windows in and literally ripped the entire face of this 9-story building off. This is a hunk of walnut I got at my local lumber yard and used the upper part. Cleaning is always the most difficult part of this. Getting rid of the soft materials. My rule is if I can stick my thumb in it, it's no good, meaning fingernail. Any fingernail that can penetrate the wood is no good, and it needs to be removed. So that's what I do. And basically just you slog away for pretty much several hours. Really no getting around it. I mean, you can use material such as grinders and things like that, and it works pretty well. And I just used the paddle bit, drilled through it, and then I envisioned the eye bolts just sticking down through, and my original plan was to epoxy them in place, which would have worked, but I just didn't end up going that route. And I just kind of put them in, and I'm going to make feet for the bottom. Again, more cleaning up. This was sort of a rasp tip I had for a drill, and that helped smooth things out. And I started 60 grit all the way to 180 and just kept on slogging away. And ultimately what I did is I brought this to my local lumber yard, and they had a planer and planed it down there. Here I am cutting the eye bolts even, so when I make this thing it'll sit perfectly level, because one of the bolts was like a 1/4 inch longer than the other one. And you can see the hammered nature of the eye bolt itself if you look at the heads of these things. And cut them nice. And now I'm making a collar that's going to hold this thing in place, and you'll see it coming up. So I drilled a number 7 bit and then used some Nylube and tapped it with a 1/4-20 tap. Again, there's no playbook on doing this sort of thing. You just kind of make it up as you go, and you literally just figure it out as you go. You just sit back, look, adjust, figure a creative way to do it, and you just do it. And I'm holding them in place. I put it on top of a washer and just welded to the washer, and then this collar fits right around the 1-inch bar. And then I'll use 1/4-20 bolts to hold it in place. And I used a stick welder on this part. Should have just used a big welder, but was too lazy. There they are. Here it is after it's gone through the planer. I'm just fine tuning, sanding, hand sanding, and hand sanding, and hand sanding. It's live edge, so it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but it's... And here I am making plates for the bottom that'll ultimately give it that lateral strength, because there's only going to be one leg on each side, and in order to pull that off, it's got to be really strong. So the eye bolt itself is 1 inch, and then the feet are going to be 3/4 of an inch, and then I'm going to have a plate that I drill a hole through. And here's a hole hog. If you ever need to drill through steel, I highly recommend these hole hogs as opposed to a hole saw, because it literally just makes easy work of any steel. And I'm gonna mark for threaded inserts here, and then I'll countersink this plate and make it look kind of nice. So I put a piece of tape on my drill bit so I know my depth will be the same on all of them. And I realize they make drill bits with collars in order to do this, but I usually just pop a piece of tape on there. And this walnut is about 2 inches thick, and this thing is a big hunk of wood. It makes a great bench. And then I just glued in the threaded inserts, used an Allen wrench, popped it in, countersinking the plate so they just look kind of nice when it's done. And then this is the 3/4 inch steel that was left over from a local job that they were going to get rid of. And back to the going with 3/4. Ultimately, it was the right decision. I was going to go with a 1/4 inch plate for the foot, but the 3/4 just gives it that extra strength for that lateral movement. And as you can see, the collar on the bottom, and the collar is holding the eye bolt in place until I get this thing nice and straight and plumb. Because what I found was the eye bolt was twisted, pitted, and it really was tough to work with and get nice and plumb in order to make a bench out of. And the collar also enabled me to kind of hold it. I was able to step back and do visuals and then come back in and make sure it was okay. Anytime you're using a piece of material that is salvaged, it never goes perfectly together. You literally battle with it because nothing is perfect. And then I just used the 1/4 inch bolt and just kind of held it into place with the 7/16 inch wrench. And ultimately I decided to just weld it straight to the collar. So I surrounded the whole piece of wood with steel, so when I welded, it wouldn't get any slag all over the wood and burn it. And here I am marking for the feet. I painted them first, and I left a little area where I was going to weld. And I just found center using my square, and then here I am holding it on top of the feet, and ultimately I hold it in place with a bucket, 5-gallon bucket, and some shims. And it actually held pretty nice, and I was able to straighten it up and get it nice and plumb. And then just pop a few welds at the bottom. And this thing is permanent. It's not going anywhere. It should never need to be repaired because this thing is so thick and heavy duty. If it breaks, it's going to be, you have more problems on your hand. And here I am just making sure it's straight. I had to check, double check, go back, measure, make sure the feet are square to one another, make sure it looks visually right when you step back. Because ultimately you don't want to weld this thing and then realize, oh, that looks off. So it was stepping back, looking, coming forward, stepping back, and just really making sure it was good. And come in for a few final welds. Okay. And then I ended up just going with a teak oil for the finish. And then just did a Minwax wax over top. Typically you might want to go with something sturdier, heavy duty sort of finish, if you will, on a bench, but this isn't going to get a whole lot of traffic on it, so I ultimately just went with the wax finish, and I'm pretty happy with it. And at the top of the eye bolts, I actually put washers, 1-inch washers, to kind of cover up any gap you would see where I drilled out. And then I ended up doing, I think 3 coats I did of the wax. And it's held up pretty well. And then here we go. This is sort of some of the final picks. You see the ruggedness of the eye bolt and the heavy dutiness of it, which I find pretty interesting. And here it is in place. And overall, I'm pretty happy with it. This thing is extremely strong. It's definitely unique. I've never seen anything quite like this before in my searches. It's a bit industrial, which I kind of tend to gravitate towards. And then again, the walnut is it's just a beautiful wood and holds up like you wouldn't believe. And a couple final shots. I'm trying to pause a little bit more on the final shot so you can really get a feel for what it looks like. You know, normally you would have 4 legs on a bench. This literally has just 2 legs, which is a lot harder to pull off than you might think. And overall, pretty happy with it.